Part 92. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 911. Du Enlai and Lu Wanting came behind Wang Feng, then looked at each other and said nothing because they didn't know what they should say. Wang Feng could just say that he killed his 42 brothers with his own hands. Although they were hopeless, in a sense, they were still alive at that time. Just like if your relative, your parents or children, is suffering from cancer or has become a vegetative state, and you clearly know that he is hopeless, and you have to spend every day in pain, then you or will he choose, to end his life immediately? Or do you try to delay it as long as you can? This is a difficult multiple-choice question, and no one can give the answer. As the leader of the Hope Legion, Wang Feng must make this choice. Everyone knows that this choice is the best, and the souls released by them can help them prove it, but if you are really asked to make a move, can you do it? At that time, all the warrior souls were arranged by Wang Feng himself. He didn't want anyone else to do this, because every time he used the Xianyuan sword to pierce a warrior's body, he couldn't wait to do it. A sword pierced his body. Because that feeling was more painful than being struck by a sword. Lu Wanting may not understand, but Du Enlai definitely knows how Wang Feng felt at that time. To be honest, if Wang Feng had thrown the weapon in his hand to him and asked him to release the souls of those warriors, he didn't know what he could have done. You can't do it easily. They don't know the souls they released before, and they have nothing to do with them, so they are happy to do it, because after all, it is to help others relieve their pain, but once this kind of thing falls on one of their own heads, the feeling, it's completely different. Wind. What are you looking for? Seeing Wang Feng still looking around, Lu Wanting couldn't help but ask, her voice trembling and her face full of tears. Wang Feng was stunned for a moment, then looked at Lu Wanting. When he saw Lu Wanting's appearance, he couldn't help but go over and hug her in his arms, and said softly, I'm looking for a way home. Hearing Wang Feng's words, Lu Wanting could no longer hold back her tears, and she hugged Wang Feng and cried loudly. Du Enlai, who was standing aside, couldn't help but burst into tears, either for others or for Wang Feng. From the beginning of the end of the world, or in other words, from the moment he established the Hope Base, Wang Feng has been burdened with too many responsibilities. From that time on, Wang Feng seemed to have never truly rested, even on vacation on his home planet. He has also been thinking about Du Enlai and the others. The entire Hope Base and the lives of millions of people are weighing heavily on him. Even after entering the ancient secret realm, there are still more than 100,000 people following Wang Feng. All of this has become Wang Feng. The concern in the wind's heart. The reason why he worked so hard was not to disappoint those who had placed their hopes on him and not to regret it. But what happened today finally made Wang Feng collapse. He is tired, he wants to go home, he wants to return to the peaceful life before the end of the world, even if he has to worry about daily necessities for food, water, and electricity, even if he does not have the power to destroy the world now. He also wants to go back. At least, that kind of life is the life he is used to. Way home. What Wang Feng wants to find is just a way back to the past. Before going to bed every day, he can check his mobile phone, play games, and even browse websites inappropriate for children, and then do what he hopes for, but it seems that he will never be able to do it. The dream that may come true, enter dreamland. Although Wang Feng is now much stronger than before, this increase in strength has brought him a weight that his life cannot bear. Wang Feng was too tired, and what happened yesterday finally became the trigger for his collapse, making him feel a little powerless and confused now. Looking blankly at Wang Feng and Lu Wanting together, Du Enlai finally just sighed silently, and then left quietly. He was a little lucky. Fortunately, he left Chen Yishan and Niu Niu on their home planet, although maybe they will never be able to see each other again, but at least they don't have to endure this kind of pain that ordinary people can't bear. This night, the camp of the Hope Expeditionary Force was much quieter. Even the Martian trio, who had always talked the most, sat silently by the campfire, thinking quietly about the impact that today's events had on them. It's too big. It's not that they can't accept the death of their comrades. Even the number of people killed today is far less than the number of people they lost in the original Battle of the Universe or in the Endless Tower. But today's scene makes them the most shocking. Those green lights and shadows that disappeared one after another appeared in front of their eyes all the time, and they would never forget the expressions on those people's faces. I really want to fight side by side with you again. The sound of the soldier leaving at the end has been lingering in their ears, lingering. No one went into the tents that were set up. The entire Hope Expeditionary Force seemed not to want to sleep today. They were all sitting together, but they didn't speak because they didn't know what to say at all. When it got brighter, Wang Feng and Lu Wanting finally walked down the hill. There was no expression on his face. Seeing Wang Feng appear, all the Hope Expeditionary Forces immediately stood up and started to move, packing up all the tents and stacking them in front of Wang Feng. After the camp was completely cleaned up, the Hope Expeditionary Army lined up in front of Wang Feng again, but no one spoke. Yesterday, I killed 42 brothers with my own hands. Looking at the Hope Expeditionary Army in front of him, Wang Feng slowly spoke. And, their bodies are still here with me. I know they don't blame me, but I blame myself. I don't blame myself because I had to end their lives with my own hands, but I blame myself for not being able to protect them. Although the people behind didn't speak, I believe that they, like the brother before, seem to continue to fight side by side with us. If I have enough strength, I have the power to destroy the rules of heaven and earth in this damned place of divine punishment, then their hopes may become a reality. Next, we will continue to set off, we will continue to fight, and we will continue to lose our brothers. Yesterday's scene was the first time we saw it, but it will definitely not be the last time. I only have one request now, that is, try to improve your strength, forge ahead, overthrow this damn world, overthrow this life that makes us so tired. I don't want to be a controller. I want to be a son, a husband, a father, and even a grandfather. No matter who comes to stop me, I will destroy him. Zombies are like this, devourers are like this, cosmic ghosts are like this, and next, our target is those undead, and then, those damn founders. Wang Feng raised his head and roared at the sky. Did you humming hear it? I'm going to destroy you. Are you going to kill me now? Looking at the unresponsive sky, Wang Feng slowly lowered his head and looked at the Hope Expeditionary Army in front of him. Did you see it? Either he doesn't dare, or he doesn't care, or this damn son of a bitch hasn't gotten up yet, but my ultimate goal is a very powerful enemy, and even, I can now say that it is an ant that attempts to challenge an elephant. But I have decided. Are you with me? All the soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Army didn't speak, but all of them straightened their chests. Lu Feng strode forward and came to the front of the team, then shouted. All troops assemble. Trample, tramp, tramp. In the queue of the Hope Expeditionary Force, there was a burst of dense footsteps. Everyone was stepping on the spot and adjusting their positions, making the originally neat queue even more impeccable. Count up. Lu Feng almost used up all his strength and shouted loudly. 1, 2, 3. The soldiers in the first row began to count one after another, and then the vertical row. At this moment, even Duan Lei, with his thunderstorm squad, stood in the queue seriously. When it was his turn, he shouted out his number like an ordinary soldier. Seeing this situation, Lu Wanting also quickly flashed out from behind Wang Feng, ran to the back of the queue, and joined the queue. Report. After the count was finished, Lu Feng ran directly to Wang Feng and saluted. His body stood straight like a pine tree. Hope Expeditionary Force, all members are currently 98,472, and the actual number is 98,472. Assembled. Please give instructions. In line. Yes. Lu Feng saluted with a standing attention, then turned and ran to the far left of the team, standing at attention. What they had done before was the Q standard used by regular troops on the planet Atlantis, and even ordinary troops used this standard. And now they suddenly began to use this Q standard. Perhaps it is a kind of nostalgia for the past, but at least from the performance of those soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Force, this method is quite effective. Brothers. Along the way, we have gone from the Guardian Corps, the Hope Corps, to the merger into the Hope Corps, and then to the Hope Expeditionary Force. Many of you have personally experienced these changes. Wang Feng looked at these soldiers and said, "No matter how we change, the road still needs to go on. Even if there is only one person left, we must complete this road, because we are the Hope Expeditionary Force." Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 912. After saying that, Wang Feng looked ahead calmly and softly uttered two words. Set off. The Hope Expeditionary Force has started their journey again, but the road they are taking now is still the same one they took yesterday, but compared with yesterday, they have 42 fewer brothers. When they set off from their home planet and entered the portal, their total number was just over 110,000. Now, along the way, more than 10,000 warriors have fallen on their way and fell into an eternal sleep. This is not the end. In the future, some of them will fall one after another. However, as Wang Feng said, even if there is only the last person left, they must persevere and finish this road. After traveling for more than 3 hours, they once again passed by the Forsaken camp they encountered yesterday and the place where they fought yesterday. The marching Hope Expeditionary Force turned their heads in unison and looked at the place where the souls of those soldiers disappeared. They were unwilling to look away for a long time, even though there was nothing there anymore. However, as the team advanced, that area finally disappeared from their sight. Duanlei looked at Wang Feng's back with a very complicated look in his eyes. He knew that Wang Feng was burdened with too much, but none of them could bear these for Wang Feng. Wang Feng was among the Hope Expeditionary Force. Position that no one can replace. Although Wang Feng is not very good at commanding troops, most of the time, he acts as a vanguard or firefighting team. Those soldiers are basically commanded by Lu Feng and Tang Haoshan. But as long as Wang Feng is there, those soldiers seem to have infinite strength and confidence to win. Therefore, Wang Feng's heart is the soul of the Hope Expeditionary Army. Duanlei was very fortunate that yesterday's blow did not knock Wang Feng down. As long as he did not fall and could still move forward with the Hope Expeditionary Army, then nothing could stop the Hope Expeditionary Army. This day's march was not very peaceful. Perhaps because they destroyed the camp of the Forsaken, the monsters in this area became active. They couldn't hunt the undead, but the Hope Expeditionary Force was obviously not among them. Therefore, the moment that Lin Li had been waiting for finally arrived, and he was finally able to test his control powers. They encountered 3 groups of monsters in total. Among them, a group of about hundreds of white wolf-type monsters was the most terrifying. Dong Huang Tai called them wind wolves. They were all wind-attributed monsters. Not only did they move quickly, but they could also spit out food from their mouths. Windblade performs long-range attacks. In order to deal with them, those warriors with defensive abilities could be said to have tried their best to protect their comrades, almost all of them suffering injuries. Fortunately, there are only a few hundred of them, and they are not large in size. The wind wolf is only over 1 meter tall and 2 meters long. In the eyes of the Hope Expeditionary Force who have seen the rhino-horned beast, they can only be regarded as small. In particular, they sacrifice defense to enhance their speed. Therefore, even ordinary weapons can hurt them. Coupled with Wang Feng's ice ability and Duanlei's thunderstorm, This group of winds the wolf didn't cause them much trouble either. I really have to thank Dong Huangtai here, because these wind wolves are very cunning, and they rushed in front of them before collectively releasing the wind blades. If Dong Huangtai hadn't reminded them in advance, I'm afraid that wave of wind blades would have attacked them. It will cause them heavy losses. After being reminded, all the warriors with defensive abilities blocked the front and directly used their own bodies to withstand the first wave of wind wolf's attacks. Although the wind blades were too dense, a large number of warriors were injured. But no death occurred. Immediately, all the agility warriors rushed into the wind and wave group. With the help of Wang Feng's ice power and the thunder power of Duan Lei and Thunderstorm team, and the long-range attacks of friends and other warriors, they directly killed most of the wind wolves. As for wind wolves, such social monsters, once the formation is broken up, a single wind wolf is nothing to fear. A single wind blade, even if it is an agile warrior, will not hit it as long as it is not a fatal place. Die. It took about half an hour for the Hope Expeditionary Army to annihilate all these wind wolves. In front of the Hope Expeditionary Army, most of which could fly, these wind wolves had no chance to escape. Lin Li finally took this opportunity to verify Dong Huangtai's words. Sure enough, after being recognized by the rules of heaven and earth in the land of God's punishment, his mental control was finally restored. 20 wind wolves were neatly arranged behind the rhino-horned beast. These wind wolves were specially selected by Lin Li to be the largest. Among them was the wolf king with golden fur and a body larger than all the wind wolves. But unfortunately, after the wolf king was controlled by Lin Li, it lost the power to rule the wolves, which disappointed Lin Li originally. He thought that after controlling the wolf king, he could conquer the entire wolf pack. So Lin Li was the first to conquer the wolf king. Although Lin Li could not fly due to his limited strength, he asked 2 warriors with defensive skills to pull him into the air to conquer the wolf king. Precisely because the wolf king was subdued by Lin Li as soon as he came up, the wind wolves were leaderless and were easily annihilated by the Hope Expeditionary Force. Therefore, Lin Li was the one who took the greatest credit in this battle. Of course, the most important thing is that if the scene was not too chaotic just now, Lin Li might be able to subdue more wind wolves. However, 20 are enough. They don't have to stay in the God's punishment land for a long time. There should be enough time for Lin Li to use his supernatural powers. As for the remaining 2 groups of monsters, there are only about 20 of them. One is a guy similar to a blind bear, and the other is a cat of quite small size. The monster like a blind bear has super strong defense. Even Wang Feng's Xianyuan sword cannot kill it with one blow. Therefore, this battle mainly relies on the sword of revenge to complete the killing. Moreover, because this kind of monster has super slow movement ability, if Wang Feng did not want to kill them and store a little food for the Hope Expeditionary Force, he would not have to pay attention to them at all, because they can't catch up with the normal marching speed of the Hope Expeditionary Force. Originally, Lin Li did not want to subdue this kind of monster, although their defense is almost invincible, and they are extremely powerful. In addition, they are also very large, with a height of nearly 4 meters, which is an excellent meat shield. But their movement speed is too slow, which is not suitable for the current Hope Expeditionary Force's combat method of marching and fighting at the same time. However, Wang Feng still let Lin Li subdue 3 of these giant bear monsters. Their defense should be useful when dealing with the undead. Although they are restricted by the land of divine punishment and cannot fight against the forgotten, they are still good for being used as meat shields to attract firepower during battles. As for the slow speed and not being able to keep up with the Hope Legion, Wang Feng is not worried about this, because Dong Huangtai said before that the monsters in the land of divine punishment can be directly received in Xianyuan space, so this is not a problem. Especially since they are just casually subdued anyway, even if there is any accident in Xianyuan space, Wang Feng and his team will not suffer any losses. After Lin Li subdued the 3 giant bear monsters, Wang Feng directly put them into Xianyuan space, and then used consciousness to check and found that these giant bear monsters fell into a state of suspended death after being received in Xianyuan space, as if they were hibernating, curled up on the ground, motionless. After feeling the steady life fluctuations on them, Wang Feng breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that Dong Huangtai was right. These guys really have no problem in Xianyuan space. When Dong Huangtai just said it before, Wang Feng actually wanted to try it, but at that time Lin Li only had one rhinoceros. If there was a problem with the other one, Lin Li would probably cry to death. Therefore, when he saw the giant bear monster that Lin Li didn't want to subdue, Wang Feng suddenly remembered it. As for the cat, the name is Lightning Weasel. Just by listening to the name, you know that this monster belongs to the agility system. In fact, the speed of these guys is faster than Wang Feng, who didn't activate the wind power. So Lin Li took 8 of them without hesitation. These little guys are not strong in combat, but they are a good choice for scouts. When it was more than 3 hours before dark, Wang Feng and his team found a small hill. Although there was still a lot of time, Wang Feng was not in a hurry to get on the road. If they encountered the Forgotten Army and entered the battle, it would be very dangerous for them. The undead are not afraid of darkness, but they are not. So, after seeing the hill, Wang Feng directly ordered to set up camp and prepare to rest. After taking out the giant bear monster as dinner, Wang Feng came to Dong Huangtai. How many small camps are there in front of us before we reach the largest camp of the Forsaken? Wang Feng really wanted to meet more undead. Although it would be a bit dangerous to fight against the undead, the most important thing for them now is to improve their strength as soon as possible. At least, those soldiers of the Hope Legion who cannot fly due to their level should have the ability to fly. This is the only way to minimize the casualties of the Hope Expeditionary Force in the battle. Small camp. Dong Huangtai shook his head. I don't know about this, because except for the largest camp, the undead camps are all random. They are still there today and may move away tomorrow. You can see that their camps are quite simple, so moving is not a big deal for them. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 913. Hearing Dong Huangtai's words, Wang Feng shook his head helplessly, but it didn't matter. Anyway, they would always go to the base camp of the Forgotten, so they might as well take it one step at a time. Early the next morning, the Hope Expeditionary Force began their journey, lining up in a neat defensive formation and walking in the empty land of divine punishment. At this time, the human race on the primordial star was already arguing, and a group of people surrounded Fuxi and kept shouting. Look at those guys from the Hope Expeditionary Force. Not only did they not bring us any benefits, but they turned this primordial star into a land of war. They are simply a group of disaster stars. Yes. Because they wiped out the race of cosmic ghosts, the balance of the primordial star was broken. Now the rule that intelligent races cannot be exterminated has been cancelled. Those powerful races have begun large-scale sieges. Now, just as we know, 4 races have been completely destroyed. We should have let them be honest at the beginning, don't go out to cause trouble, and start what kind of war? Do you think you are so great just because you have some energy? Now not only have they been annihilated, but they have all been killed by the founder. We humans are also in danger. The war will sooner or later reach us. Fuxi did not react to what these people said. Anyway, with his status, these guys were just talking. No one dared to really attack him. Moreover, they could only talk about the Hope Expeditionary Force. No one dared to say that he deliberately pitted the human race. Even Dong Huangtai, who knew that Fuxi was an obstacle to his journey to the Endless Tower, could do nothing about him. What he cares about now is the Hope Expeditionary Force. To be more precise, he is guessing the whereabouts of Wang Feng and Xiu Jian. He knows that Wang Feng and the others should not be dead, but where did they go? It has been almost a month, and there is still no news from them. Just after they disappeared, all the creatures on the primordial star heard a voice in their minds. The entire race of cosmic ghosts has been destroyed, the balance of the primordial star has been broken, and there will be no restrictions on the killing between races. When the first creature walks out of the land of God's punishment, the endless road will be opened. During this period, no race will be able to leave the primordial star. After this voice appeared, the primordial star was calm for a few days, and then some powerful races began to conquer everywhere. Before, they only barely maintained peace on the primordial star because of that rule. Now that the rule is invalid, they will certainly not continue to remain silent. So, the flames of war finally burned on the primordial star. Although no one knew what the endless road was, any race could guess that it must be related to the endless tower. Thinking of the previous legend about climbing the endless tower, those powerful races could no longer sit still. After the endless road is opened, all races will definitely become opponents, because there can only be one race that can successfully reach the top of the endless tower, that is to say, except for their own race, everyone else is an enemy. And now they don't know the rules of the endless road. Who knows if the resources there will be unusually rich? If that's the case, the status of these powerful races can't be maintained. Therefore, destroying a race now is equivalent to killing an enemy for yourself. Especially those high-tech races that have the opportunity to turn the tables have become the first choice of those powerful races. Fortunately, the powerful race closest to the human race also needs at least 1 month of marching to reach the human race's territory. Therefore, the war has not yet burned to the human race. But everyone knows that the participation of the human race is only a matter of time. This time it is equivalent to a war that all races will participate in. The human race will definitely not be able to stay out of it. Dong Huangtai didn't speak. He was quite depressed now. He originally thought that he hoped that the expeditionary army would be wiped out, and his trip to the Endless Tower should be put on the agenda soon. But Dong Huangtai didn't expect that after the expeditionary army exterminated the cosmic ghosts and they all disappeared, the primitive star actually began to prohibit any race from leaving here. The human race did not verify the authenticity of what the voice said. It was a joke that a voice could be transmitted to the human territory and even to the ears of all creatures on the primitive star. Therefore, Dong Huangtai's trip to the Wuji Tower could only wait until someone from the God Punishment Land came out. As for what and where the land of divine punishment is, it is estimated that no one on this primordial star knows, because only those who have entered the land of divine punishment know that place, but no one has ever escaped from it. Therefore, the land of divine punishment is definitely an unknown area for the races on the primordial star. The land of divine punishment, where exactly is that place? Dong Huangtai looked at the chaotic venue and murmured softly. Could it be that Wang Feng entered this land of divine punishment? Dong Huangtai was also one of the people who knew that Wang Feng was not dead, and he was more certain than Fuxi, but he did not say it out loud, because it was related to his own grand plan, and he had been brewing this plan for tens of thousands of years, and no one except himself knew about it. Therefore, the appearance of that voice can be said to be in line with Dong Huangtai's original intention, because when he was going to the Endless Tower, he had to meet Wang Feng first and get back something that belonged to him. Okay. Stop arguing. Seeing that there was still noisy in the conference room, Dong Huangtai couldn't help but shouted loudly, because he knew that even if the quarrel lasted until next year, there would be no results, and for the future of the human race, he actually didn't have any forebodings now. For the first time in so many years, Dong Huangtai felt that there were things that he could not completely control, especially Wang Feng. Haoshan. In the past few days, we have been preparing for war with all our strength. Since we can't leave the original star, we will intelligently defend. No matter who comes to attack us, We will counterattack with all our strength in the first battle. Don't worry about resources. Just use as much as you have. Dong Huangtai looked at Haoshan and said. Okay. Got it? Haoshan, Qiyu and Xin Tian's eyes suddenly lit up. Dong Huangtai's decision can be said to be in line with their wishes. The resources currently reserved by the human race are actually no less than those of Wang Feng. After all, they were once a powerful clan. Why? There will be no foundation at all. The reason why they are not used is because these resources will be used less and there is basically no way to replenish them. The resources currently stored by the human race are enough to support them in fighting an unusually large war, and after the war, they can all be taken away from the original star, of course, if they can leave the original star. Although all space battleships cannot be dispatched, there is no problem at all in dispatching a space battleship of the Yanhuang level and millions of small fighters. Moreover, Dong Huangtai's strategy is very simple. Whoever dares to attack the human race first will directly destroy his invading army with all his strength, so that other races behind him will use rat weapons to prevent them from easily attacking the human race. Although this is more risky, at least it is much better than a point-by-point resistance. Once the war enters a stalemate, I am afraid that the human race will have to face more than one race of enemies. There are several powerful races on the original star now. It is estimated that they have reached an agreement long ago. First, they will destroy the other weak races, and then they will fight it out. This is the best choice for those powerful races. No matter what the endless road looks like, at least it is certain that the fewer races involved, the better. Haoshan, Qiyu and Xin Tian turned around and left, and those who left with them were several high-ranking military officials. They were going to prepare for war. Although they had made preparations before, they could now use their resources freely. Then, small fighter planes would attack. They still have to think about the order arrangement. If resources can be controlled at will, then what the human race lacks now is not small fighters, but people who pilot small fighters. You know, among the 3 space battleships, there are more than 3 million small fighters. And the human race has a total population of only a few 100,000. Therefore, all pilots flying fighter planes need enough life-saving equipment to ensure that they can still return safely after being hit and jumping out of the plane. The loss of fighter planes can be completely ignored in the early stages of the war. The loss of personnel is a real loss. Third brother. Do you think, Wang Feng and the others are in the land of God's punishment now? After seeing Haoshan and the others leaving, Dong Huangtai suddenly looked at Fuxi and asked. Fuxi couldn't help but be stunned. It seemed that Dong Huangtai hadn't called him this for tens of thousands of years, right? But he immediately replied. I don't know, I just think they are not dead yet, but I'm not sure where they are. What? Those Hope Expeditionary Forces are not dead yet? It's impossible, isn't it? How can any creature survive such a big pit? I'm afraid they would have turned into nothingness long ago. There's no way they're alive. They are definitely dead. There is no hope at all. These cheaters should not be allowed to come to the original star. It's okay if they die. They deserve it. The key is that the fire is almost reaching us now. What should we do? After hearing Fuxi's words, the high-level human race officials present exploded again. Get out of here. Dong Huangtai's face darkened, and he shouted in a low voice. He was in a very bad mood now. When he heard these people screaming, he suddenly became angry. After being at ease for so long, now this group of high-level people from the human race, the enthusiasm I had at the beginning has long since disappeared. Apart from bickering all day long, there is basically nothing left to do. In particular, they often quarrel over a small matter for 10 days and a half, but in the end they still cannot come up with a real solution. To describe them as stupid as pigs may be an insult to pigs. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 914. Seeing Dong Huangtai getting angry, the human leaders were stunned. They seemed to have forgotten the last time Dong Huangtai delivered goods. They were at a loss for a moment, until one guy reacted and slipped out in shame. The others followed and left the meeting room, leaving only Fuxi and Dong Huangtai. After everyone left, Dong Huangtai looked at Fuxi. "I think it's necessary for us to talk. You know my thoughts and I understand your position, but at least during this period of time, we should eliminate the barriers between us. No matter what, during this period of time, our goal should be the same, which is to try our best to preserve the human race and reduce casualties." "That's right." Fuxi nodded. "But actually, it doesn't matter whether you say it or not. You should know the mission of the three emperors of our human race. As long as it is beneficial to the human race, no matter what, I will never interfere. So, during this period of time, you should not worry about me. I also believe that you will do your best to protect the human race during this period of time, because you still need them. In fact, this is the difference between the two of us. You protect the human race for your purpose, and I for my mission. No matter what it is, at least our goals have been agreed for the time being, so what do you think we should do next?" Dong Huangtai asked. "I don't know anything else, I just have a strong premonition." Fuxi replied, then walked to the window, pushed it open, pointed to the portal and said, "We must protect that portal, otherwise, humans may, unimaginable accidents." After hearing Fuxi's words, Dong Huangtai frowned, looked at Fuxi's expression very seriously, and then began to think. Although he himself is the great prophet of the human race, for some reason, it seems that his foresight ability has disappeared during this period. Even when the primitive star fell into chaos, he did not receive any signs. This was impossible in the past. And since he can't receive signs about the future now, then Fuxi's words are more valued by him, because he knows that Fuxi actually has some prophetic abilities, but because the human race can only have one great prophet, Fuxi's ability in this area will not be strengthened. Now that Fuxi has expressed his premonition, Dong Huangtai must consider it carefully. He can be sure that Fuxi, one of the three emperors of the human race, can't lie to him at this time. It's about the future of the human race. Even if Fuxi doesn't like him, he will never play tricks. Wait, the human race can only have one great prophet, and the foresight ability of this great prophet suddenly disappeared inexplicably, and Fuxi actually knew that they couldn't lose the portal. What does this mean? Dong Huangtai suddenly felt a chill on his back. Could it be that the great prophet of the human race is also going to be replaced? Looking at Fuxi, Dong Huangtai suddenly felt a little regretful. When Wang Feng just arrived at the primordial star, he should have started his plan and should not have let them provoke the cosmic ghost. As a result, now, even if he wants to start his plan, it is completely impossible. Not to mention that he doesn't know where Wang Feng is, it is impossible to leave the primordial star, return to the human race's home planet, enter the ancient passage, and find the endless tower. Moreover, if it is really as he imagined, the great prophet of the human race will be replaced by Fuxi, then after losing the identity of the great prophet, he will also lose his appeal in the human race. Although his status is still there, it is absolutely impossible to lead the human race and let the human race help him to climb the endless tower. Originally, Fuxi strongly opposed his proposal, but due to his identity, he could not stop him directly. Once the identities of both parties were reversed, the consequences would be. Dong Huangtai even had the urge to kill Fuxi immediately, but he knew that this was impossible. Not to mention that in the meeting hall of the human race, as long as there was a fight inside, the guards outside would rush in. In terms of strength alone, he was no match for Fuxi. The most powerful thing about the great prophet was his predictive ability, not his combat power. If he fought with strength alone, Fuxi could beat at least two of him. If the person in front of him was not Fuxi, but any other high-ranking human being, Dong Huangtai might be able to frame him and get rid of him with the help of others. Even if Haoshan was here, Dong Huangtai might take the risk. But this person is Fuxi, Fuxi of the three emperors of the human race. All human races know that among the human race, the least likely to betray the human race is the three emperors of the human race, because protecting the human race is the mission of the three emperors of the human race. Even when so many people questioned Fuxi just now, no one dared to say that Fuxi was harboring evil intentions. Instead, they all blamed the Hope Expeditionary Force, and dared not take action against Fuxi. This was not a matter of strength, but the faith of the human race. The three emperors of the human race are the guardians of the human race. This concept is deeply rooted in all human races, and even the great prophet cannot change it. Dong Huangtai's mind was racing, and for a moment he didn't know what he should do. But Fuxi didn't expect that Dong Huangtai had murderous intentions towards him just now. Although he also saw that something was wrong with Dong Huangtai, he just thought that Dong Huangtai was considering whether to believe him or not. How to protect this human race's portal? You think about it carefully, I'll go see Haoshan and the others. Looking at the uncertain face of Dong Huangtai, Fuxi was a little unhappy. At this time, could Dong Huangtai still doubt himself? Therefore, after Fuxi said these words to Dong Huangtai, he turned around and left the conference room, walking towards the military camp. Looking at Fuxi's back, Dong Huangtai clenched his fists tightly. It seemed that Fuxi didn't know that he had lost the ability to predict, so maybe things hadn't reached the worst point yet. In other words, as long as there is enough time, he can still carry out his plan, and now, Dong Huangtai can only hope that in that place of divine punishment, a creature will come out quickly, and quickly open the endless road, so that he successfully implemented the plan he had been brewing for a long time and fulfilled his dream. This should be the first time that the Eastern Emperor Tai of the primordial star coincides with Wang Feng's thoughts. Now Wang Feng is indeed looking for a way to leave the place of divine punishment. However, the words that spread throughout the primordial star at the beginning, it has not reached their ears, so they have no idea that the original star is now quite chaotic. Moreover, even if they knew, they wouldn't care. They are not Fuxi. The human race of the original star is not that important to them. The only people who can make Wang Feng care about are Fuxi, Haoshan, Xintian and Qiyu. Wang Feng and the others experienced several battles in the land of God's punishment. There were camps of the forgotten and monsters from the land of God's punishment. Therefore, while the army of monsters expanded, there were more than 100 the soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Force fell forever. Without exception, they all fell in the battle with the undead. Although they had adapted to fighting the Forsaken and improved their fighting methods, due to their numbers and the undead characteristics of the undead, they still, when you can't do it like fighting monsters, you only get hurt but don't die. It is worth mentioning that Wang Feng has now confirmed that only after dismantling all the undead present so that they are no threat at all can he start to release the soul. Even if there is one undead that can still fight, the green light spot will be gone. Will not appear. Wang Feng even tried, taking the back of a forgotten person that had shown light spots, and instead of releasing his soul, he stayed by his side to look for the next wave of undead. And when the new undead appeared in their sight, the green light spot on the backbone in Wang Feng's hand also disappeared at the same time. It was not until they dismantled these forgotten people into skeletons again that the bones will flash with green light spots again, which means that the founders have truly killed Wang Feng's ideas. Wang Feng finally understood that it was impossible for him to let other undead see him releasing his soul. Damn founder! Don't let me see you! Wang Feng cursed fiercely. You must be feeling proud now, right? When I see you, you will cry. But Wang Feng didn't guess that the current founders were not complacent, they were quarreling. Number 2. Isn't this a bit against the rules? Why hasn't the human race's prophet replacement been completed yet? In a mysterious space, several figures were gathering together and having a heated debate. What's against the rules? It's not that I'm preventing the replacement of the prophets of the human race. This is caused by the human race themselves. We cannot interfere in the affairs of any race below. Unless they commit a crime, we can send them to God. The place of punishment, it's not like you don't know this. Moreover, now that the final steps have been started, even if we want to intervene, we can't do it at all. How about you try to stop or change the process and see if you can do it? It's really not you who did it. Nonsense. If I had done it, I would have been wiped out by now. Who dares to disobey the instructions given by the controller? What kind of supervisors are we talking about? In fact, we are just a group of spectators. You don't have to argue. This is indeed not done by number 2. I've found the reason. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 915. The two supervisors who were arguing suddenly looked towards the one who spoke. There were 4 people present, all of them wearing white robes, covered from head to toe. Even the face was covered by a white scarf, only a pair of eyes and eyebrows were exposed. The supervisor who just spoke just now had his exposed eyebrows furrowed. He looked at a screen in front of him, and the 10 fingers of his hands were flying up and down, and he was constantly tapping a set of virtual keyboards on the screen. Come on, come on. The other 3 people all gathered around him and looked at the screen. Then, their brows also frowned. What is going on? When did this prophet of the human race have so many clones? And he is actually independent of consciousness. How did he do it? Why didn't we discover it before? The supervisor who questioned number 2 before asked. Look. Number 4. I just said it has nothing to do with me. Although I don't think favorably of the human race, at least I won't break the rules. Number 2 finally cleared himself of suspicion. Number 1. Didn't they break the rules by doing this? The supervisor who had been silent all this time looked at the screen and asked. If calculated according to the number, he should be supervisor number 3. The number 1 supervisor, the one operating the screen, slowly shook his head. If we could have discovered it earlier, this should be considered a violation, but now that the final trial has begun, all races of the original star have no restrictions, so, of course it is not a violation. But you also said that he did this before, even if we didn't find it, it's still a violation, right? Number 2 said with some indignation. It seemed that what he said before was a bit biased. It was not that he was not optimistic about the human race, but he had great opinions on the human race. Yes. You can report this situation to the controller. Number 1 did not look back, still looking at the screen. However, even if this prophet will be punished, will we be fine? There were obviously violations, but we didn't find out. You don't know how the controller punishes the supervisor for dereliction of duty, right? After hearing what number 1 said, number 2 immediately fell silent and stopped saying anything. At the beginning, they had a total of 9 supervisors, but now, there are only 4 left. As for the other 5, each of them is unwilling to think about them, because it is a nightmare for them. Okay. Ignore him, it's the final trial anyway, and everything is about to end. Number 1 finally stopped his hands, then turned his head and said behind him. Number 4, clean up the traces and erase all the previous abnormal conditions of the human race. Remember not to leave any traces as for their profit, just treat this situation as something that just happened. Yes. Number 4 agreed, then stood in front, took over the position of number 1, and started busy on the screen. Human race. No wonder it is favored by the controller. It seems that it is indeed somewhat powerful. Compared with other races, haha. I am really looking forward to it. After the endless road opens, what kind of excitement can you bring to me? What about the performance? After number 1 left the screen, he raised his head to the sky and murmured to himself in a low voice. I don't know if he can perform well, but Wang Feng knows that his head hurts now. At this time, he was standing in front of a city, his brows furrowed. Right? It's the city. After the land of God's punishment, there has always been dark red land, vast plains, occasionally visible hills, and bloody skies. This scenery has made the Hope Expeditionary Army look a little numb. But now, they actually saw a large city in this deserted land of divine punishment. Although the walls of the city and the buildings inside are all piled up with the dark red stones from the land of God's punishment, the color of the entire city does not look any different from the color of the land of God's punishment. Difference, but such a magnificent city was actually built by the Forgotten. This shocked Wang Feng. When he first saw the city, he repeatedly confirmed with Dong Huangtai. Dong Huangtai told him seriously that the city was the base camp of the Forgotten. Seeing Wang Feng's shocked look, Dong Huangtai couldn't help but feel a little funny. Then he looked back and found that the rest of the Hope Expeditionary Force basically had the same look. Hey! Don't be so surprised, right? Dong Huangtai explained. You have to know that the land of God's punishment was probably born together with the primordial star. The creatures imprisoned in it have never escaped. In such a long time, they must always find something to do, right? This city was not of such a large scale when I first came in. They continued to build it to reach what it is now. And now they are also continuing to build it? Wang Feng nodded. It makes sense when you think about it. These forgotten people have nothing to do at all in the land of Shenfa. Apart from going out to catch the new people, they seem to have nothing else to do. In addition, they have endless lives. If they don't find something to do, they really don't know how to spend these long years. Lin Li, Wang Feng looked back at Lin Li who was riding on the rhino-horned beast and nodded to him. Lin Li understood and immediately responded. Yes. Then, more than a dozen small monsters rushed toward the city ahead like arrows. Because the city's walls were very high, about 4 meters long, and there were many buildings inside, Wang Feng was blocked in advance, so Lin Li was allowed to attack. The controlled monsters act as reconnaissance troops and enter the city. After about 10 minutes, Lin Li did not report any data. Instead, his expression became increasingly weird. What happened? All the monsters were killed? Duan Lei asked. No. They. Lin Li hesitated and said. They didn't find any creatures in the city. What? Everyone didn't believe it? This was the headquarters of the Forgotten Ones. How could there not be any living things? Look carefully and go inside the building. Wang Feng frowned and said. It's in. Lin Li said unjustly. I asked them to look for sewers, but there are no underground buildings in the city, and there are no traces of any living things on the ground, either outside or inside the buildings. Keep searching, search the whole city, and if you find anything, tell me immediately. Wang Feng looked at the city and said softly. After 2 full hours, Lin Li commanded the small monsters under his control to turn the entire city upside down, but, still nothing was found. Are you sure there are no creatures? Undead are not counted. Are there any monsters or something? Wang Feng asked again without giving up. No. Absolutely not. Lin Li said firmly. I have searched the whole city and found nothing. Although these small monsters cannot attack the Forgotten, their sense of smell is very sensitive. If there are undead in the city, it is impossible not to be discovered by them. There is no use in hiding. You guys wait for me here, I'll go take a look. Wang Feng looked at the city, then took out a small fighter plane and jumped on it. Be careful! Lu Wanting shouted from below. Wang Feng turned around, looked at Lu Wanting, and made a victory gesture. Then, the fighter plane took off and flew towards the sky above the city. Wang Feng drove a small fighter plane to the top of the city. Sure enough, on the life detector of the small fighter plane, there were only a dozen small light spots moving around. These light spots were all small monsters photographed by Lin Li. Apart from these, the life detector never found any other life. Moreover, Wang Feng did not find any moving objects within his sight. This city actually looked like an empty city. However, in the very center of the city, Wang Feng made some discoveries. Of course, they were not the forgotten ones. This city indeed looks like what Dong Huangtai said. It appeared because the forgotten people were bored and looking for things to do for themselves. Therefore, the shape of this city is also quite strange. There are so many walls, one inside a circle, a total of 7 walls. The center of the city should be a small city built by the undead in the first place, and this small city was built on a hill. A wall more than 4 meters high surrounded the hill from the foot of the hill. On the hill, many buildings have been built, especially the one built on the top of the hill, which is about 20 meters high. This height may not be considered much in the civilized country of mankind, but this is a magical place. In the land of punishment, they have no other materials except stone and clay. Therefore, this 20-meter high building can be considered quite magnificent. Wang Feng continued to fly the fighter plane, raising the altitude a bit, and then looked around the city. After confirming that there was nothing abnormal within the surrounding area of the city, he returned to the location of the Hope Expeditionary Force. "It's really nothing," Wang Feng said after jumping off the fighter plane, and then told Duan Lei and the others everything he had just seen. "Then what should we do now?" "Go to the city," Tang Haoshan asked, because Wang Feng said that the center of the city is a hill, which means that they can live in the city at night. Wang Feng didn't answer and turned to look at Duan Lei. Duan Lei pondered for a while, then suddenly raised his head and looked at Wang Feng. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 916. Madman. "This thing is a bit weird. Do you think, should we go in?" Duan Lei looked at Wang Feng and asked. There was not a single undead in the forgotten space camp. They had been prepared for a battle, but now they couldn't find the enemy, so Duan Lei didn't dare make decisions easily. After all, his words may determine the life or death of the entire Hope Expeditionary Force. "I think there's no need to think about it so much." Wang Feng looked back at the city. "What is our goal? Attack the base camp of the Forsaken, kill all the undead, release their souls, and increase our strength. This is their base camp. Since they are not here, let's go in and wait for them. In fact, it makes no difference. Those monsters in the forest have traveled to every corner of the city and have not found any mechanisms. Besides, with the gods with the materials in the land of punishment, I doubt what kind of mechanism they can make. According to my guess, the city in front of us is nothing more than 2 situations. The first one is that the Forgotten Ones discovered that we are coming, so they left a trap for us. After we enter, they may appear, trap us in the city, and catch us all. The second is that there is a problem with the rules of the land of God's punishment. The founders don't want us to continue to increase our strength by releasing souls, so they don't know how to transfer them. These 2 possibilities, no matter which one they are, will not prevent us from entering the city. If it is the second possibility, then there will be no danger in the city, so of course we can enter. And if it's the first type, although we will be in a hard fight, and although we don't know how many they have, if we stick to the city and defend it, at least we can get some advantages. Although we will be trapped in the city by them, I have just seen that the innermost city center is also a small city. It happens to be built around a hill. It is just right for us. Besides, even if we don't go in, if the Forsaken find us, it won't be very difficult to trap us. They just need to follow us and wait for us to set up camp at night, and they can easily surround us. Don't forget, we don't dare to stay in the plains at night. We have to find a hill to camp. But the Forgotten Ones don't have this worry. If we are trapped in a hill, we will only be worse than in the city. Passive. At least there is a city wall here, and thanks to their boredom, the city wall here is quite thick. After hearing Wang Feng's words, Duan Lei thought for a while and found that Wang Feng was right. At least, if the Forgotten wanted to besiege them, they didn't need to expend a lot of effort. They only needed to find the hill where they were stationed, and they could do it in one night. It was enough time for them to gather their troops and surround themselves. Now that they have the city, they have a place where they can take advantage of the danger. Okay. However, I think you should take a few people to check the city center first to see if there are any problems with the buildings and walls. If the Forgotten Ones are fighting us, those buildings or walls, if it suddenly collapses, it will be a big problem. Duan Lei nodded and then suggested. No problem. Let's go in first, and you can follow and check if there is anything going on in the city along the way. Wang Fen nodded, then turned around to greet Qiu Jian, Xiao Wu, and number 7, and together they jumped on the small fighter plane again and flew towards the inner city in the center of the city. No problem. After checking the inner city, number 7 was the first to speak. I estimate that the first situation you mentioned is very likely. I think these forgotten people left on their own initiative. Moreover, they once wanted to destroy the buildings here, but their previous work failed. Great, so they don't have the ability to destroy him themselves. Number 7 pointed to the outer wall of the central building and said. There are many obvious scratches on the outer wall, but the buildings here are all piled up with stones and bonded with soil in the middle. They are actually quite strong. Wang Feng use Xian Yuan sword to chop it with all your strength, and it will only be a gap of a few centimeters in size. Maybe. They don't have that much time either. Wang Feng smiled softly, looked at the gap he had just cut and said. They probably discovered us yesterday or the day before yesterday. There was no time at all. It seems that these undead have a big appetite and actually want to keep us all here. Then, let's see who, it's a hunter. In fact, Wang Feng's guess was not entirely correct. Only yesterday, these undead discovered the Hope Expeditionary Force. After discovering such a huge team, these forgotten people were quite excited, because they had not had anything to do for a long time. Dong Huang Tai is right. The only thing these forgotten people who have these endless years can do every day is to build cities. Since the city is getting bigger and bigger, they don't want to slow down, so they have to spend their efforts on precision. As for going out to search for new criminals, the Forsaken people in the small camps outside are not enough to play with, so where is their turn to catch them? Seeing so many newcomers, the Forsaken in the entire base camp were all excited. They could finally have a good game. With so many humans, if they were frugal, they might be able to play for several years. These Forsaken seemed to have heard the painful horns of those humans. After experiencing extremely painful torture and staying in this desolate place for a long and boring time, all the Forsaken had completely twisted thoughts. Only blood and wailing could make them excited. And just when they were preparing for the war, a Forsaken proposed a new game, that is, siege. There were millions of undead in the base camp of the Forsaken, and 100,000 humans, which obviously could not bring them lasting joy. So, the Forsaken proposed that they all evacuate the city and wait until those humans entered before they attacked. In this way, the rhythm of the war would be controlled by them, and the duration would naturally be as long as possible. Anyway, if you think you have had enough fun today, you can retreat. When you want to play, you can come and attack again. This fresh suggestion immediately received the support of all the Forgotten, so they immediately prepared to leave. Wang Feng guessed wrongly that if they really wanted to destroy these buildings, They could really do it. However, when some undead were doing this, they were stopped by the Forgotten who came up with the idea. His meaning was to leave like this. Once the buildings were destroyed, it would be too easy to fight, and it would not be fun. Those undead naturally realized it, so they gave up their actions. For them, the greater the difficulty, the longer they would play. In the land of God's punishment, the opportunity to meet so many newcomers at once may only be this once, and no one wants to waste it. Therefore, when Wang Feng and his team arrived, they saw an empty city with no living creatures at all. Moreover, in order to avoid being discovered by Wang Feng and his team, and not daring to enter the city, these Forgotten did not even leave scouts, all hiding far away, preparing to come back a day later. They also knew that the newcomers with strong blood and vitality would never dare to spend the night in the land of God's punishment outside the hill. There was almost a 100% chance that the space cracks and time and space storms would visit them. And the fact that these trusts could come here naturally showed that they were also aware of this matter, so the Forgotten ones were not worried at all that these humans would not enter the central inner city of the city. After confirming safety, all the members of the Hope Expeditionary Force finally entered the central inner city of the Forgotten base camp. Speaking of which, these undead were indeed powerful, because the land of God's punishment was quite desolate, with only stones and soil, and a small amount of water. However, the Hope Expeditionary Force did not dare to drink the water here. In this situation, the Forsaken, who could not find any trees or other plants at all, actually polished the huge stones and turned them into thick and solid stone doors, which were quite convenient to open and close. It seemed that endless years could allow anyone to do anything he wanted to do. After entering the inner city, there were still nearly 2 hours before dark, and during these 2 hours, Wang Feng and his team searched the entire inner city and confirmed that there were no hidden dangers. After that, they began to allocate combat plans, because the inner city was built around a hill, so the range of the city wall was not large, and the 100,000 expeditionary soldiers were fully capable of defense. Of course, this was when the more than 1 million Forsaken did not rush forward. If all their troops pressed forward, with a 1:10 ratio, the expeditionary army would definitely not be the opponent of these undead spirits. So, the city wall was only the first line of defense. Once they could not hold on, they would immediately evacuate. The tall building in the center of the city was their final line of defense. Wang Feng and his team tried it out. The building was very solid. The unarmed Forsaken did not seem to be able to destroy it easily. More importantly, the building could accommodate 100,000 people. After everything was arranged, it was already dark. Wang Feng took out the bodies of the insect army and some monster bodies from the God's punishment land, and began to ask the Hope Expeditionary Army to prepare dinner. Thus, the base camp that originally belonged to millions of undead was occupied by a group of less than 100,000 human beings. Countless bonfires decorated the central inner city with incomparable light. The next morning, Wang Feng, standing on the top of the tallest building, suddenly shouted, "Everyone prepare for battle, our guests have arrived." Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 917. In Wang Feng's sight, a large number of forgotten people were sweeping in overwhelmingly. They didn't have any queues, they were just a large group of chaotic people coming over. However, because there were so many, there were more than 1 million, so it was difficult to see them. It sounds quite impressive. Seeing the number of these undead, Wang Feng shook his head secretly. He didn't expect that there were so many criminals in the land of God's punishment. These, plus those in other small camps in the land of God's punishment, all increased. Together, it is estimated to reach more than 2 million. However, thinking about those long years, Wang Feng felt relieved about this number. Now I hope that all the people of the expeditionary force will gather in the central inner city. Although the outer city walls can also be used for defense, they are not enough in number. Instead of blocking them layer by layer from the outside, it is better to concentrate them all. Inner city. Moreover, although these forgotten people could not fly, the 4 to 5 meter high city walls had no effect on them. They could pass by with a slight jump, so Wang Feng did not pay too much attention to these walls. After the army of the Forgotten approached the city, their first action was not to attack the city, but to spread out and surround the city. In this way, all the people inside became turtles in a jar. They had their idea. Not even one of them can be let go. Afterwards, among these undead, there were about 100,000 troops, leaving the other forgotten ones and marching towards the inner city. This was the strategy they had discussed. In order to have more fun, they would attack in batches. The first wave is only 100,000, and it will be decided based on the battle situation. If the human race has too many casualties, then reduce them some more. If their own side is invincible, then increase them. Anyway, they are just looking for some excitement for their boring life in the land of God's punishment. It doesn't matter how many people they send out. They don't care about death, and even they can't die at all. They hope that the expeditionary force can release their souls. Of course, they don't know. Even if Wang Feng and the others say it, they won't believe it. At least, although their current life is also a kind of torture, they can choose to work hard to make themselves feel better. Once they are torn apart, what if they die, are buried underground, and fall into the endless darkness? That's the scariest thing. Therefore, I am afraid that they will only believe it if they see it with their own eyes, but Wang Feng and the others cannot do this. Therefore, fighting to the death is the only option for the Hope Expeditionary Force now. Seeing that there were only about 100,000 forgotten people attacking here, Wang Feng couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. If it was only 100,000, it would be acceptable. However, those forgotten people standing on the city wall and watching around, you can join the fight at any time. Attention everyone, when we enter the battle, don't use all your strength, try to appear evenly matched. Slowly drag them to death. Wang Feng ordered. The situation is obvious. There are so many forgotten people, but less than 1/10 of them have come out to fight them. These undead are just taking advantage of them for fun. This is exactly what Wang Feng and the others want. If they come up and dispatch the entire army in a swarm, I hope that even if the expeditionary force can withstand it, they will definitely suffer heavy casualties. If they appear to be evenly matched, maybe those forgotten ones won't increase their troops, and we'll need to wear them down a little first. Seeing the Forsaken getting closer and closer, Wang Feng took a deep breath, then turned to look at the soldiers of the Hope Expedition behind him, and thought to himself, I hope, after this battle is over, they won't lose too many people. After all, after their death. Thinking of this, Wang Feng's body suddenly stiffened, and he suddenly realized a rather terrifying problem. That is, their current situation is actually similar to that of Atlantis in the previous apocalypse, except that one of the enemies is a zombie and the other is an undead. But at least they have one thing in common, that is, when these warriors die, will turn into a creature exactly like the enemy. The only difference is that when fighting zombies, once bitten or scratched, they will mutate, but here, only after death, the soul will be sealed, and the corpse will also become undead, and the zombies are completely unconscious. The undead seem to be able to temporarily control their bodies with their souls. When they fought before, the souls of those comrades who died in the battle would be released after they ended the battle. Before that, those comrades who died would work hard to suppress their bodies and make themselves more like a corpse. Corpse. Because they don't know what they will become once they give up suppressing their bodies and stand up again. They know too little about the forgotten people. But now, so many forgotten people are coming, especially the more than 1 million undead on the outer city walls. They will definitely not leave. So, what if a soldier dies during the battle? Can they suppress their bodies? Just looking at the number of forgotten ones, we know that this battle will last for a long time, and on such a large scale, there will definitely be soldiers from the Hope Expeditionary Force killed. So these fallen soldiers, what to do? If they can't suppress their bodies and stand up again, even if they can always control their bodies, who can be so cruel as to wield the weapon in their hands, pierce their bodies, and release their souls? Listen up. This battle will last for a long time, so everyone should adopt a conservative fighting mode. Wang Feng suddenly shouted loudly. Remember, no one is allowed to die. Once injured, retreat to the back to recover immediately. Don't take any risks. Do you understand what I mean? I repeat, this battle will last for a long time. After hearing Wang Feng's words, the soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Force subconsciously responded in unison. The thick-skinned ones just answered and didn't think about it anymore, but most of the soldiers heard what Wang Feng meant. What the boss means is, if we die, we will become those guys, right? Right? That must be what he meant. Didn't you hear the boss say twice in a row that this battle will last a long time? If one of us dies, it is estimated that we will not be able to suppress it for such a long time. Yes. Then everyone must be careful, and must not die, otherwise, if you die, you will die, and if you get up again, you will drag down our Hope Expeditionary Force. Well, then use a defensive formation to fight them. Anyway, the boss said at the beginning that you don't have to use all your strength, just fight them on equal terms, so use a defensive formation to slowly grind them. But in this case, the killing speed will be slow. Can our physical strength last until the end of the battle? Don't worry about it, anyway, it's right to listen to the boss. Yes. Come on. NND. If we kill all these guys, we estimate that we can all break through level 10 and reach the strength standard of Qiujian. Haha. Yes. There shouldn't be any problem, but I've said in advance that if any of us dies, don't suppress it. If we suppress it to the end and lose control of our bodies, we're done for. Then what should we do? Simple. I don't know about you, but if I die and my soul is sealed, I'll be the first to rush into the middle of these guys, and I'll be able to destroy a few of them, right? Huh? Good idea. Hey. Pass it on and remind everyone that if anyone else is really glorious, don't control it, just rush in directly. Okay. Pass this method on, and keep your voice down, don't let the leader hear it. The Hope warriors were whispering below, and soon, the suggestion made by the previous warrior was passed to almost all the Hope warriors, but because they were afraid that Wang Feng and others would object, only ordinary warriors like them knew about it. Even some ordinary warriors who were close to the core members did not get this information because they were afraid of leaks. Wang Feng naturally didn't know about this situation. He was hesitating about one thing, that is, whether he should use small fighters at the beginning of the war. There were 5 small fighters in his Xianyuan space. Now, almost all the people in the Hope Expeditionary Force can fly small fighters, and small fighters are quite useful for dealing with these undead. However, the number of small fighters they have now is too small, only 5. Facing the millions of forgotten, it is simply a drop in the bucket and can't play a big role. In particular, if he used small fighters at the beginning, then the forgotten side would probably send reinforcements to them because they saw his trump card. After all, they have more than 1 million ghosts. At least for now, there is no shortage of troops. After thinking for a long time, Wang Feng finally gave up. The trump card should be kept until the end. Now, he only has this trump card. All the hot weapons in Xianyuan space were equipped to the Hope Expeditionary Force last night. Whether it was a submachine gun or a sniper rifle, as well as a machine gun, a rifle, and a pistol, all of these were distributed to the soldiers. However, they would not use these hot weapons until Wang Feng ordered them to use them. Wang Feng now really hoped that his soldiers could each have a heavy machine gun with unlimited bullets. Unfortunately, he could only think about this kind of thing. Damn! If only the Yanhuang was here. Wang Feng looked at the approaching enemy in front of him, muttered, and then stared at them, calculating the distance between the two armies. When he saw that the 100,000 strong army of the Forgotten had crossed the wall in front of them and was about to approach the city, Wang Feng finally shouted. "Start fighting, attack everyone. I hope that after the battle with the insect army, the expeditionary force will once again usher in a battle that will be extremely difficult for them." Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 918. The densely packed Forsaken finally attacked, but fortunately there was a wall. Although the undead could jump over it, the Hope Expeditionary Force had already assigned positions on the wall. These positions were arranged in advance after detailed calculations. In front of them, there was only a position for one Forsaken to stand, and there was no room for more. Of course, the wall was less than 5 meters high, and even with the Hope warriors on it, it was less than 7 meters high. Those Forsaken could jump over their heads and jump directly into the inner city. But if they really did this, the Hope Expeditionary Force soldiers left under the wall would tear him into a skeleton the moment he landed. Because the Forsaken army surrounded the entire city first and then started the attack, the inner city wall was almost involved in the battle at the beginning of the battle. However, because the Hope Expeditionary Force had already secured their positions on the city wall, every Forsaken who jumped onto the city wall had to face 2 or 3 Hope Expeditionary Force soldiers at the same time. The undead following behind could not jump up at all because they were blocked by their own kind on the wall in front of them. Even if they managed to jump up, they could not help at all and would soon be squeezed down by the undead in front of them. And a few Forsaken who took the risk and jumped up with all their strength, jumped over the Hope Expeditionary Force soldiers on the city wall, and jumped directly into the inner city were directly torn into skeletons by the ambushed people inside. In this battle, because of Wang Feng's advance warning, the Hope Expeditionary Force fought quite conservatively, but the effect was also seen. After more than 2 hours of fighting, more than 10,000 Forsaken had been torn into pieces by the Hope Expeditionary Force, and piled up around the city wall in a mess. So far, no one from the Hope Expeditionary Force had died. However, because Wang Feng had said not to show too much strength before, almost every Hope Expeditionary Force who had to retreat to rest due to injury or too much physical exhaustion would pretend to be chopped off the wall or fall down when they left the battlefield, so that the Forgotten would think they were dead, in order to confuse the other side. But the soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Force did not know that as long as there was no one-sided situation on the battlefield, the Forgotten would not care. They were still hoping that fewer human beings would die, so that they could play for a while longer. As for the Forgotten, no one cared about them. Anyway, they could not die. If they were torn apart, they would sink into eternal darkness. Anyway, it was not themselves who were torn apart. Although these Forgotten were gathered together and had their own classes like all intelligent races, they were simply indifferent to each other. They themselves were craving death. Do you still expect them to care about other people around them? Even if the 100,000 Forsaken were all torn apart and faced with falling into eternal darkness, the onlookers would definitely not have any regrets. As long as their mentality was satisfied, it would be fine. In fact, the Forsaken who were watching did not practice with those who were attacking the city. For them, the scene they saw now was just a movie. The life and death in it had nothing to do with them. They just needed entertainment. So, the battle between the human race and the Forsaken lasted for a day under this weird situation. Although the Hope warriors tried their best not to die, there were still more than a dozen warriors who were directly pulled down from the wall by the undead. Even if they had the ability to fly, it was useless and they eventually lost their lives. When the first warrior who fell off the wall appeared, Wang Feng was startled, and then immediately wanted to rescue him. Even if he was dead, At least he had to take back his body. But Lu Feng behind him seemed to have guessed Wang Feng's idea long ago. The moment he left, he pulled him back and shook his head firmly at him. "Don't go. He knows what to do." "What?" Wang Feng was stunned, then raised his sword and chopped a Forsaken in front of him off the wall, then looked at the place where the warrior fell, because his body had been submerged by the army of undead below, so Wang Feng didn't know the current state of the warrior. Suddenly, a figure stood up from the ground, then roared and rushed towards the Forsaken in front of him. It was the warrior who fell off the wall before, and he still held the weapon he held tightly when he fell. The warrior's eyes had turned blood red, and he seemed to be somewhat disoriented, but he knew that he was now under the city wall, so he was surrounded by the Forsaken, so he waved his weapon wildly and rushed into the depths of the undead army. Several undead who were caught off guard had their bones cut by him, and then, these undead were enraged, they gave up the city wall and began to besiege the dead warrior instead. Since this warrior had just died and his soul had just been sealed, in appearance, except for the blood-red eyes, there was nothing similar to the undead anywhere else. But as the undead around him attacked, the soldier's clothes and flesh began to be torn off one by one. In just 1 minute, the soldier became a skeleton. Even his right arm holding the weapon was torn off by other undead. But the soldier was still shouting, his only remaining left arm was grabbing in front of him, and his steps did not stop for a moment, until his bones were all broken by the undead around him and scattered on the ground. Seeing this scene, Wang Feng's eyes also turned blood red. He turned around suddenly, grabbed Lu Feng's collar, and shouted loudly. "This is what you said he knew what to do? I was going to save him just now. This is the soldier's own choice. Do you have a better way?" Lu Feng did not struggle, but looked at Wang Feng calmly and asked softly. "I." Wang Feng was stunned, his body trembling violently, but he could not say a word, because he had no better way. When the soldier fell from the city wall, he was destined to lose his life. No matter how much life energy Wang Feng had, he could not save him. Wang Feng knew this in his heart. He just subconsciously wanted to take back the soldier's body. He didn't think that if he succeeded, the soldier's body might cause trouble to more soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Force. "Ah!" Wang Feng suddenly roared, then turned around and jumped off the city wall, holding the Xianyuan sword tightly with both hands, slashing desperately. Lu Feng just glanced at Wang Feng, and then he joined the battle again. He knew that with Wang Feng's strength, his life would not be in danger down there. And Qiu Jian and Xiao Wu were not in this direction at this time, because their current battlefield was a whole circle of city walls, so the high-end combat power and core figures were also evenly distributed in all directions. In fact, it was thanks to them that the Hope Expeditionary Force had only lost one soldier until now. Wang Feng didn't know how long he had fought until he found that another soldier, like the previous one, rushed into the zombie army after his soul was sealed, and then he woke up. Ever since Wang Feng released the souls of the 42 soldiers with his own hands, he had been suppressed by a very strange feeling in his heart, although he also knew that those soldiers were dead and he was just helping them by doing so. But those green souls brought him a huge shock. The soldier who rushed into the enemy group just now and was finally torn off his flesh and blood and turned into a skeleton finally made his depression reach its peak, and at this moment, he released it. After a period of crazy killing, especially when he saw another soldier died, Wang Feng finally woke up. He looked around at the battlefield where the battle was still going on, and suddenly flew directly into the air and came to the center of the city. Then, Wang Feng switched the form of Xianyuan sword, and then began to draw his bow and arrow, playing the role of full support. Wang Feng now has countless arrows in his space, some of which he had collected in Atlantis, and some of which Gao's Hixing had helped him collect on his home planet. However, in the previous battle, the damage caused by the arrows was too small, so not many of them were consumed. And now, these arrows are finally put to use. Although Wangfeng is now at the center and not so close to the city wall, the damage caused by the arrows is not that great, but Wangfeng does not want to use feather arrows to dismantle the bones of these forgotten people. A large number of arrows flew out from the longbow in Wangfeng's hand and shot at the undead on the city wall. A circle of white mist surrounded each feather arrow. That's right, Wangfeng now wanted to use his ice ability to help the soldiers of the Hope Expeditionary Army buy time. The undead who were hit by the arrows were all slowed down by the ice ability. Although the duration was not that long, it was enough for the Hope warriors fighting with him to cut off his arms and make him lose his most powerful weapon. Wangfeng's current choice was the most correct. With his support, the Hope Expeditionary Army on the city wall suddenly felt less pressure, and the number of undead began to decrease rapidly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 919. When night was coming, the Forgotten finally withdrew their troops, but they did not retreat. Instead, they still stayed on the outermost city wall. It was obvious that they were afraid that Wangfeng and the others would escape. Moreover, the reason why the Forsaken withdrew their troops was not because they were not good at night fighting. After staying in the land of God's punishment for so long, they were basically familiar with all the environments. However, when entering the dark night, these close combat skills were forgotten. Although those who watch the battle from a distance are not affected, the same cannot be said for those watching the battle from a distance. Therefore, they are withdrawing their troops now. One reason is to give the humans surrounded by them some time to breathe and recover so that they can play for a while. The other most important reason is because at night, those outside watching the battle, the Forsaken, could not see the battle scene clearly, and it was not as comfortable as during the day, so they called a truce. The first day's battle brought the loss of 16 people to the Hope Expeditionary Army, and countless people were injured. It was almost impossible to find an uninjured person among the Hope Expeditionary Army. Oh! By the way, there is one exception, and that is Lin Li. On the first day of the battle, Wangfeng and Duan Lei did not let Lin Li fight because the monsters he controlled simply refused to attack the Forgotten. Therefore, he and some women, the soldier, became a rescue soldier. For this reason, Lin Li was quite unhappy. Seeing others fighting while he was with a group of women, he felt quite depressed, but there was nothing he could do about it. Lin Li had not trained with the Hope Expeditionary Force, so even if he joined the battle, he would not be able to help. Being busy may disrupt the rhythm of other warriors. Although Wangfeng, Xiao Wu, Number 7 and Qiu Jian are the same as him, these people have super strong combat power, especially Qiu Jian. Without him today, perhaps the expeditionary force's casualties would have reached 3. Number. Qiu Jian is now very powerful against the undead. He goes up and follows the neck bone with a sword. He first kills the head of the undead, and then the long sword cuts directly down. The ribs on one side, together with the arm and leg bones, will leave the forgotten person. The body of the undead was mostly disabled, and it basically lost its combat effectiveness. Therefore, in today's battle, if we count the number of enemies killed, Qiu Jian definitely tops the list. Although the undead he killed did not really die, as long as they lose their combat effectiveness, they are equivalent to being killed. They are. Now that the Forgotten have not left, they cannot release their souls. Therefore, only after all the wars are over can the Forgotten be completely eliminated. For the Hope Expeditionary Force today, the results should be quite brilliant. At the cost of a dozen people, at least more than half of the Forgotten people were turned into broken bones on the ground, and they lost their combat effectiveness forever. Although more than 50,000 undead are only a small number compared to the more than 1 million Forgotten, but as long as the Forgotten still maintain this playful mentality, then I hope that the expeditionary force will still have a chance. As for the mentality of the Forgotten, it is unknown whether it is something they themselves have or whether it is caused by the intervention of the founder. However, judging from previous experiences, the possibility of the founder's intervention is very high, because, if the number of the Forgotten exceeds 1 million, and all of them come forward in today's battle, I hope that the expeditionary force will exhaust all its cards. If they come out, the entire army will probably be annihilated. Although more than half of the people can fly into the air to avoid the Forsaken, there are still nearly half, more than 40,000 Hope Expeditionary Force soldiers, who cannot fly and can only choose to fight. And if they enter the battle, those flying warriors will not sit idly by and join the battle. With a ratio of 10 to 1, even a million-strong army of the Forgotten cannot enter the battlefield at the same time, but they can completely use it. Use intermittent attacks and use the Sea of the Dead tactic to consume the Hope Expeditionary Force. In this case, it is estimated that the strength of the Expeditionary Force will be exhausted in less than 2 days. Obviously Wang Feng and Duan Lei are also aware of this. For the Hope Expeditionary Force, which has just entered the land of divine punishment, the Forgotten ones are really not something they can shake now. But the way the Forgotten are attacking now undoubtedly gives them a hope of victory. Wang Feng, Duan Lei, and Lu Wanting were sitting on the top of the tallest building in the center. Because of today's battle, all the soldiers were exhausted, so Wang Feng took on the task of keeping watch. This building is the commanding height of the entire city. Sitting at the top, even in the dark night, Wang Feng, who has the eyes of the sky, can still have an unobstructed view of the bottom. As long as he is there, it is impossible for the Forgotten to launch a sneak attack. Today is over. I don't know how long this battle will last. Duan Lei looked at the darkness below and said, "Haha. No matter how long it takes, in short, this war can only have 2 results, either they are all annihilated, or we are all annihilated. But if these Forgotten ones continue to attack in this way, then we still have to attack in this way. There is hope." Wang Feng smiled and then looked at Lu Wanting's injured arm. Lu Wanting also stayed on the city wall for a day today and did not hide behind because she was Wang Feng's woman. The injury on her arm was caused by the claws of an undead. Starting from the shoulder and ending at the elbow joint, a strip of flesh was torn off directly. This was not cut with a sharp weapon, but was torn off hard. The pain can be imagined and no. But Lu Wanting didn't care. After experiencing so many battles, this kind of injury was no longer taken seriously by them. Lu Wanting's injured arm was not even bandaged at all. Wang Feng finally felt relieved when he saw that Lu Wanting's wound was no longer bleeding and was gradually healing. It was estimated that she would be able to recover by tomorrow. Although Lu Wanting's recovery ability is not as abnormal as Wang Feng, Xiao Wu, and others, in any case, Lu Wanting has now reached the peak of a 7th level creature, and her own healing ability is also relatively strong. Guess how many troops the undead will invest in tomorrow's battle? Wang Feng put down Lu Wanting's arm and asked. "I don't know. I feel that these guys are actually the ones we use to kill time now, so there is no way to guess this. Moreover, the mentality of these Forgotten people is extremely unstable. Once they are stimulated by something, they may directly go ape." Duan Lei hesitated and said, Duan Lei can still predict normal enemies, but he really doesn't dare to guess the mental state of these Forgotten people. "That's right. No matter how many times he comes, we have to carry him, otherwise, the whole army will be annihilated." Wang Feng said. "Liza, do you feel that my order to enter the city was a bit rash?" "Haha. What's the difference?" Duan Lei chuckled and said. "You said it yourself, this city is the same whether you enter or not. Anyway, after the Forsaken discovered us, we had no way out. In this land of divine punishment, we can't escape no matter what. Rather than being surrounded by them on a hill with nothing, it would be better to be here. If our current location were not in the city, and there was no wall to block our people, Even if these 100,000 undead were still attacking, today's losses would have reached at least 4 digits. So, anyway, they have come in now, and I guess these forgotten people will fight us to death, so let's have a good fight with them. After finishing speaking, Doomsday stood up and said, "Oh, I'm going to have a rest too. I'll leave it to you two to keep watch at night. Don't just look around, what the heck, forget to keep watch. Get the hell out of here." Wang Feng grabbed a stone and threw it at Doomsday. Doomsday dodged it lightly and then left with a smile. After Doomsday left, Wang Feng and Lu Wanting just cuddled together and looked down quietly. Wang Feng turned around from time to time to see the movements of the forgotten people behind him. The two just sat like this, until dawn. When the land of God's punishment returned to light in an instant, all the Hope Expeditionary Force had already taken their positions on the city wall, and the army of the Forgotten were only about 10 meters away from them. As local snakes in the land of God's punishment, they grasped the time of dawn quite accurately. They had already started taking action when it was still dark. After discovering their actions, Wang Feng naturally gave the order to prepare for war. Damn it, these guys really don't waste any time, do they? Lu Feng cursed loudly and waved the long knife in his hand made of meteorite iron by Apostle John. Wang Feng is still floating in the air. Although maintaining flight consumes a lot of money for him, this is where he can play his greatest role. Yesterday, Wang Feng's consumption was quite large. Without the previous storage, with all the life energy, Wang Feng couldn't do this. You must know that in addition to the consumption of continuous flight, every arrow he fired is attached with ice energy. Therefore, only Wang Feng in the entire Hope expedition can do such a thing. The life energy he has stored can only be used 100% by himself. If he provides it to others, he will lose much more than he absorbs. Unless it is an emergency, it is definitely not cost-effective. Madman! Doomsday turned around and shouted to Wang Feng, because he was on the city wall and couldn't see all the forgotten people, and he was unwilling to expend energy to fly up to see, so he simply asked Wang Feng, "How many troops did they dispatch today?" Wang Feng looked around in circles, and after making a rough estimate, his face darkened. "There are twice as many Forsaken today as there were yesterday, which means that today they will face an army of 200,000 undead. Doomsday Special Forces. Author, Huanjing Chengzhu. Chapter 920. What worries Wang Feng is not the 200,000 Forsaken. Although the number has doubled, the Hope Expeditionary Army is still capable of taking them. At least, with these 200,000 undead alone, they cannot capture the city where they are. Wang Feng is quite clear about the combat power of the Hope Expeditionary Army, but today, the strength of the Forsaken will increase by 100,000. What about tomorrow? What about the day after tomorrow? There are still nearly 1 million Forsaken watching the battle on the periphery. As for the source of troops, they are not short of them at all, but the Hope Expeditionary Army is one less for every death. It is definitely not good news for the current Hope Expeditionary Army to fight a war of attrition. The battle started soon. Perhaps because there were more troops this time, their offensive became much more fierce. However, because the soldiers on the city wall were in a very good position, they were able to resist them. However, this battle lasted less than 10 minutes, and the Forsaken under the city wall began a new tactic. The undead in the front row were still attacking the city wall, while the undead in the back formed a big circle behind them, and then charged forward. "Everyone be careful. They are going to jump in." Wang Feng, who saw the actions of the Forsaken clearly in the air, suddenly shouted, and then looked at the expeditionary soldiers inside the city wall. After hearing Wang Feng's words, the soldiers who were still in ambush got up one after another, then moved their bodies, shook their weapons in their hands, and prepared for battle. Wang Feng guessed correctly, the group of undead behind them were indeed ready to jump in. This was not a plan made when they set out before, but a temporary decision made by the commander who led this army. If the undead watching the battle behind knew that the commander had such an idea, they would definitely oppose it, because in this way, the humans would have less time to support, and they would naturally have less fun. However, the Forsaken who was commanding the army to fight did not think so. He just wanted to play something more exciting. How could an ordinary siege alone satisfy his desire to command? You know, the undead who fought yesterday have become spectators today, and those who fight today will be the same tomorrow. According to this progress, it is estimated that he will not be able to appear on the stage next time. So, after finally getting a chance to play, this Forsaken will certainly not give up easily. He is the first batch of Forsaken, that is, the kind who starved to death. He still has skin on his body. Although it is shriveled, it can at least represent his identity. Among the Forsaken, those with skin are of higher status. Those pure bones dare not offend at all. Otherwise, although I can't kill you, I can dismantle you and bury you deep underground, letting you enter eternal darkness. There are many such Forsaken in the underground and walls of the city. Because of more serious reasons, they were dismantled by their own kind and buried underground or built into the wall. The undead commander outside, after the jumping the wall troops of about 50,000 people he organized were ready, gave an order, and 50,000 undead started running together, then jumped up, past the soldiers on the city wall, and jumped directly into the central inner city. Looking at the undead falling like raindrops, Du Enlai flew directly to Wang Feng without saying a word, and then launched a thunderstorm. Because Wang Feng's position is the center of the central inner city, and the scope of the central inner city is not large, therefore, Du Enlai stands here to release the thunderstorm, which is just enough to cover the whole city, although more than half of the city wall is still outside the range of the thunderstorm, and the guards on the wall can't take advantage of the thunderstorm. But it is enough to deal with the 50,000 undead who jumped in. After these undead came in, Qiu Jian, Xiao Wu and Number 7 immediately moved their battlefield to the inside of the city wall. They knew that these forgotten people must be killed as soon as possible, otherwise, no one could concentrate on fighting when they were attacked from both sides. Wang Feng remained beside Du Enlai without moving, and even his feather arrows did not fall on the undead in the city. After being hit by the thunderstorm, the undead were already slowed down, so there was no need for Wang Feng's frost ability to slow them down again. After Du Enlai released the thunderstorm, it only lasted about 10 seconds before his ability ended. Because he had tested it before, the thunderstorm could not kill these forgotten people, and could not even tear down a single bone of them. But there is one advantage of the thunderstorm, that is, as long as it is released, the electric snakes will stay on the bodies of these undead for a long time, and before the electric snakes disappear, these forgotten people will be in a paralyzed state. So Du Enlai only needs to have all the undead within the range of the thunderstorm visited by the electric snakes, and he will complete his mission. The commander who gave the order did not jump in himself. He was also afraid that he would be torn apart and could only lie motionless on the cold ground in the future, so he stood on the wall behind to supervise the battle. Although the two walls were the same height, making it difficult for him to see the situation inside the city, Thunderstorm's large-scale group attack ability could be seen by anyone who was not blind. Even the Forsaken on the outermost wall could clearly see Thunderstorm's light shield, let alone him. But this guy didn't care at all. Not to mention the life and death of the Forgotten who jumped in, he didn't care at all. Just looking at the power of this powerful superpower, he knew that this thing was ineffective against them. Of course, his guess was correct. The thunderstorm really couldn't do anything to the bodies of the Forgotten, but what he didn't know was that the paralysis effect of the thunderstorm was quite troublesome for the undead who jumped in. Since there were more than 60,000 expeditionary soldiers standing on the city wall, there were only more than 30,000 people under the city wall. Compared with the 50,000 undead, they were at an absolute disadvantage in terms of number, especially on the ground. They couldn't block positions like on the city wall. Fortunately, Wang Feng had reminded the expeditionary soldiers inside before, so they were prepared in advance and all retreated to the wall, waiting for the enemy to attack. This prevented the scene in the city from being too chaotic, and as soon as the Forgotten jumped in, they found themselves surrounded by the human race. In fact, the best way for the Hope Expeditionary Force in the city was to gather together and let the undead army surround them. This would be more conducive to their cooperation, and the scope of the battle would be under their control. However, in that case, the soldiers on the city wall would be caught in a situation of being attacked from both sides. Therefore, although Wang Feng did not issue any orders, the soldiers inside still chose to approach the city wall immediately, and no one gathered in the middle. Fortunately, after seeing the Hope army jumping in, Duan Lei immediately launched a thunderstorm, causing the Forgotten who jumped in to fall into a slow state, which prevented the situation in the city from collapsing immediately. When the expeditionary soldiers in the city saw the thunderstorm and understood its effect, they immediately rushed forward and no longer maintained the encirclement. Instead, they adopted a three-person team combat mode and killed the Forgotten ones. They knew that before the thunderstorm disappeared, the brothers on the city wall didn't have to worry about the undead, because their speed was slowed down, that is, they had no explosive power. Even if they were put on the other side of the city wall, they would not be able to jump up. Before, their concern was that the Forgotten ones would pass through them and attack their comrades on the city wall, disrupting their battle rhythm. Now that there is no such concern, and these undead are all in slow motion, of course they will not be polite. The temporary three-person combat teams, like sharp blades, cut directly into the undead army. After a team rushed forward, an undead rushed towards them. The defensive psychic in the team rushed forward, grabbed the undead's hands, and then pulled them towards themselves, and at the same time, hit the undead's skull with his head. The undead whose claws were caught jumped up and kicked the soldier's stomach with his 2 feet. The soldier ignored the feet attacking him and hit his head heavily on the head of the undead. Crack! With the sound of broken bones, the head of the undead tilted to the side and hung on his own shoulders. His neck bones had been broken, and only a tendon in the neck bones was connected to his head. And his attack on the soldier's feet did not achieve any results, because the two soldiers in the same group with the soldier, one on the left and one on the right, directly cut off his leg bones with weapons. Since the movements of the undead were all slowed down, the soldiers of the expeditionary army had enough time to cut their weapons into the joints where the two bones were connected. That was their most vulnerable part, and ordinary weapons could easily cut it off. Afterwards, the defensive warrior threw the undead to the ground, and the warriors on both sides rushed out, broke its arms, and even broke it into several sections. Then, while the undead was powerless to resist, they dismantled all of its skeletons. So, in less than 10 seconds, this three-man combat team successfully dismantled an undead into bones on the ground, making it completely unable to continue fighting. While they were fighting the undead, scenes similar to their battles were constantly staged in the inner city. Aiming at the characteristics of these undead, the Hope Expeditionary Force has developed several sets of combat plans. No matter what method the undead used to attack them, they would choose the most suitable tactics in the shortest time and give a powerful counterattack.